in the midst of this sin-filled city, Pergamos Baptist Church remained true to Jesus. Okay? Everybody's with me. So look at what else he says there. When he says there, not only does he say that you held strong, and not only did he say you hold fast to my name, is what verse 13 says. But what he also says there in verse 14, he says all of that is true. But verse 14 begins with but, which means that it is set in contrast to everything he done said before. Okay? He says, so I know the city, I know what you're doing, but although you're living in the midst of Sin City, it is no excuse for what's going on there in the church. I know that paganism is running rampant. I know there is idol worship that is running rampant, but it is no excuse, Pergamos Baptist Church, what you are allowing to go on in the church. I know you held fast to my name. I know that you held fast when you were persecuted. When you were persecuted, you didn't move one bit. But what Satan does is when Satan can't get you through persecution, he gets you through deception. This is what's happening there in verse 14. Look at verse 14. He says there, but I have a few things against you, because you have there. Now look at these words are so important. I know that you know this, but I just want to say it just for the conversation. Words in the Bible mean something. So look at what Jesus says there in verse 14. He says, but I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the doctrine. Look at verse 15, and we'll come back to verse 14. Look at what else he says there in verse 15. Thus, you also have those who hold. So when he said that in the midst of this Pergamum Baptist church, you got three groups of people, if you will. You got those who are holding fast to the teaching of Balaam. You got those who are holding fast to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. But then you got these over here that ain't saying nothing to nobody about anything. They just watching it all go by. He says there in verse 14, he says there, I have a few things against you, because you have those there who hold the doctrine of Balaam. So now the question that you must ask is, what is the doctrine of Balaam? Scripture always interprets Scripture. So let's go to Numbers chapter 25. Numbers chapter 25. Numbers chapter 25. The environment they were in was a difficult environment. The environment they were in was a hard environment. The environment they were in was full of idol worship and full of idol gods and full of immorality. But he says there was no excuse for you to be behaving the way that you were behaving. And his rebuke, as you're turning there, not only goes on the people who are doing the dirt. I know Trump said that today, but that's the only word that came to my mind. Those who are doing the dirt, he says, but I'm also mad at you for letting them do the dirt. And you not saying anything. So the challenge that comes is that when we see compromise in the church, why we just sit there?
So basically, the young people are the ones that have the energy to do the legwork to say racism and capitalism are what? Wrong. If you think about when you talk about the protests back during Jim Crow days, it was young folk.
SCLC.
Right, like Martin King, he wasn't 67. Ralph David Abernathy, Andrew Young, Wyatt T. Walker, John Lewis, yeah, when John Lewis got his head busted up, he wasn't 57. They were the ones on the front line. Yes. But they would send them to the military, right? So that would stop them from being able to what? Stir up trouble. Right. So that's the benefit of militarism. To say we could ship them off so that they won't stir up trouble to mess with our white privilege. Does that make sense? So that's what my uncle was talking about, the American Trinity. And Ronald Niebuhr said this. Okay. I got 5 things going on. Come on. Says this. Man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible. But man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. And then last thing. A simple synopsis of the system reveals a sick sociology based on a faulty anthropology which emanates from a flawed theology. This is my uncle right here. A man's attitude toward other men reflects the nature of his ultimate values. So in other words, if I value putting you down, that means my values are suited on hate and bigotry. And anything to keep you down is what I'm willing to do to stomp on your neck so that you'll never get up. So this is why they have policies put in place to keep stepping on your neck. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is why the black church becomes relevant, because the black church has to use what we just wrote down, its prophetic voice to speak truth to the power, where we can't say, oh, love is not just a simple answer. Right? Because that's what the white minister will say. Let's love everybody. But as a whole, racism is not affecting your people. As a whole, capitalism is not affecting your people. Earlier today, I went to the Braves game. They won, 7-game winning streak. Right? None of y'all know. Thought I had some Braves for this. My bad. But when I look around, who were mainly the most of the people made up the population famous?
But they won the World Series with the black players.
Oh, back in the day, you're right, 95. Yeah. Most of the folk who were there, who had the money to pay for it, to get in the game, right. Most folk who were on the team. Like one of the things that bothers me is when politicians have the audacity to call black folk lazy. It was black folk that helped your family have the fortune you had. Right?
Every youth ministry needs a transition process. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The black church is the only place where you can be 50 years old and still be considered a young adult. Let me say it again. The black church is the only place where you can be 50 years old, eligible for Social Security, AARP, right? And still be considered a young adult. Why are there 50 and 60-year-olds in the young adult choir?
Well, you know, reaching 50 in a few years, I still feel young.
She said she only is young.
That's why, because 50 is the new 20.
In theory, yes. In reality. We just gotta be honest.
As I get closer to that, like,
They just don't want to move.
I'm about to say, but see, that's...
They don't, because that's like in our Sunday school. I don't know why they kept sitting up there, and they knew they should have been out there in the RH Uncle. They up there 70 and stuff, still sitting up there with them youngest. Every time we have Sunday school promotion, you can promote them, but they don't still go down there.
We get it.
And see, here's the thing.
We get it.
I'm 30 years old. I realize that I'm no longer a youth. And that's okay. I might not be that far removed from it, but realistically, I'm not a youth, right?
Yeah.
But there's got to be a transition process in place, because as we said, the goal is not for them to stay in youth church forever.
Yeah.
Okay? The goal is not for them to stay in youth church forever. But if youth church is so awesome, right? And the main sanctuary isn't on par. That's something that needs to be addressed. Okay? So there's got to be a transition process in place so that they can mesh well in the next step. Okay? Look at youth church as kind of regular school, right? You got elementary school, middle school, high school, college, grad, if that's your, pursuit or whatever. So you got to go in order. So youth church is in essence something that you graduate from.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? But again, this is one of the essentials of youth ministry. They have to learn something. Don't let them graduate from youth church the same way they came in. But that's part of the transition process. Make sure they're ready to transition. Make sure they're ready to go out and use what they've learned and apply it to their lives, right? Be able to sit in a sanctuary where it's not intimate like this, where you can ask questions and have a conversation. Because on Sunday morning, unless your pastor's got a real unique style, he or she is just going to preach to you and that's it. But in youth church, you can ask questions, right? In youth church, you can dialogue. You can sit in a circle. It's an intimate setting, okay? And that's one of the reasons why our young people love that setting, because it's helpful and it helps them grow. Okay? But the transition process is saying you're not going to be here forever. So what can we do to help you so that you'll do just as well in a different setting? Okay? And for the record, I wasn't calling you old. So.
No.
Had to throw that in there. All right, so next slide, parental relationships. Okay? Now, obviously, when it comes to parents and guardians, every child has a different situation. Okay, so these are some general statements. But please know, I'm aware that there are different situations. I'm aware that there are different scenarios, all right? But prayerfully, these can apply to most, if not all. Number one, there are no youth without parents. The kids got here somehow, right? Somebody brought them to church, okay? So we have to recognize, first off, the importance of parents. Parents can sometimes be our worst nightmare, but ultimately, sometimes parents can be our greatest ally, and we should be aiming for the latter. Okay? We should be aiming for the latter. Be open, honest, and respectful of parents, even when it's difficult. Sometimes it is difficult. Okay? Now, God has blessed the church that I serve with some wonderful parents. They're like, whatever we can do, let us know. We will have them there. They're always on board. But my wife, the church that she serves, she tells me some horror stories about some of these parents. Some horror stories. But one thing I admire about her, she is always respectful. She's firm. She don't put up with no mess. She let them know what's up, because sometimes you got to do that, right? But she is open, she's honest, she's not secretive. That's the other one.